The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Welcome back to Mission Minded. Keep your mind, your mission on your mind. He is the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, Michael Coleman, a good friend of mine, and I love doing this show every week because I get a chance to not only talk to my good friend from a mother of another, but talk about some business. And of course, we have another show called Bite by Bite, which is right after this show, which is specific to Feeding America and the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. Hashtag HAFB, HAFB.org if you want to be part of any of that stuff. Info at TonyCurreRadio.net. Info at TonyCurreRadio.net if you want to send out some emails based on our show today or any of our previous shows. And by the way, we're consistently in the top 10% of all listened to podcasts in the country. We have 18 different shows we do on Tony Kurre Radio. This is just two of them, so we're very, very proud of this. Michael, you doing okay? Everything good?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Just constantly striving to overcome challenges in the food insecurity world. But I love the work and love leading our organization and helping solve problems with people and helping empower them. And
hey, before we move on, and please don't hate me for this because you just reminded me of something else that's totally unrelated to what we're supposed to get into today. And we've restarted the show like 17 times, by the way, because we keep coming up with better ideas. Was it the governor of Texas that came out and used the football analogy? Was it Abbott? Came out and used the analogy of like winning football teams don't point fingers. They find solutions.
I'm not sure.
I will. And since we're doing this, we don't. And all I gotta do is we don't point fingers, and it's gonna come up right on the thing here.
The thing.
Yeah.
All this technical talk, you're probably speaking over the heads of our audience.
This, yeah, no doubt. And again, all right. Yeah, okay, let's take it from the top again. Shit. All right, we're 9 minutes in. All right, here we go in 3, 2. Welcome once again to Mission Minded. This is the 17th time we've started this show. We're going to get it right this time because every time we come up with a topic or something, we come up with something a little bit better. We want to have a good show. It's a good business show. Michael Coleman, CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, HAFB.org, hashtag HAFB. And then we have another show called Bite by Bite, which we do right after this. It runs on our network of Tony Kurre radio stations. We have 18 different podcasts that we do run from like 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. You can go back. We're consistently in the top 10% of all listened to podcasts in the country. Very, very proud of that. And one of the reasons we bring you great content, no matter how many times we have to restart the show, we'll do it to make sure we bring you great content. There is a very interesting piece you wanted to get it into, the 9 mindsets of the most successful CEOs. We'll get into that here in just a second. But I did want to ask you, Texas Governor Greg Abbott obviously has had his hands full with that unbelievable, horrible flood they had down in Texas. And he made a very interesting analogy with winning football teams. Of course, there's one state that you can make an argument where college and high school football may be the same, if not bigger than it is in the state of Alabama, and that's Texas. He went on to use a pigskin analogy this past week in response to a question about who is to blame for the flash floods that now have killed well over 100 people. And he basically said that every inch of the Lone Star State loves their football and that winning football teams don't point fingers. They come up with solutions. Normally when someone would say something like that, he is diverting the attention of the question and doesn't want to answer it. And so, but any college or high school football fan will go, yeah, when you get in a locker room and you've just gotten bludgeoned 42-0, that's not the time to point fingers and say, well, you screwed up. You sit down together and you work it out solution wise. Now we also know that in college and professional football, they have tape. You go to your own little rooms and they will absolutely annihilate you. Why did you miss this block? Why did you miss this tackle? What the hell were you thinking here in this third and long play? There is time for personal perseverance and responsibility when it comes to that. But I do like that. It is a rah-rah moment. And so I kind of wanted you to start there because that may be considered one of the mindsets of a very successful CEO, and that is not to point blame. When you know there is direct blame on something that has had a direct response on how you perform, regardless of whether you're a football team, a food bank, or maybe a horrible flood situation, what is the best way to start that blame, and how do you get the people's attention without throwing them under the bus?
Yeah, and it happens all the time, and especially the way I choose to lead, which is I delegate a lot. I give people authority, and when you do that, they're going to make more mistakes. But I think my saying is there's no single thing or mistake anybody in this organization is going to make that's going to bring the food bank down to its knees. Now, so I don't want people living in fear. I want them making their best decisions. What I'm always going to do is come to somebody who makes a mistake and, ask them, walk me through what you were thinking. So that's somebody who makes a wrong choice. And then it turns out, and I told them, I'm never going to kill anybody if you can go, hey, this is what I was thinking. This is what I weighed. I chose this. Turns out it's not right, because that happens to me, because lots of times when you're stepping into a space and you have at least thought it through and said, okay, logically to me, I think this is the best choice. And I said, as long as you can cite for me what your thinking was and your logic was, I don't care so much if it's was a better choice. I mean, a wrong choice, because lots of times it just turns into coaching.
Well, let me ask you this real quick before you go on. Will you ever sit down with someone that you don't agree with and then put it in their basket of responsibility and say, all right, you do it your way, but it better work?
Yes.
And by doing that, is that, because some people would say that's not being a very good CEO, because you're basically setting up for failure, saying, okay, if you want to do it your way, it's fine, but this shit better go.
Yeah. So I would not ever say those words. What I've done is, if you want people who work for you to have buy-in, and it's an interesting thing, because I've just had this conversation this week with one of my directors, and she knows that I want her to take ownership. So I can't dictate everything. I have to allow her thoughts to drive it. She has to be able to take ownership. She's got to have serious input. So there's times where I look at it and I go, 100%, this is not going to work. I already know it. And so I'm going to stop you from going down this path. But there's other times where somebody may make a compelling argument. In my heart of hearts, I'm saying, I don't think it's going to work. What I usually tend to do is go, okay, here's what you're proposing. I want to give you feedback of the things that I'm concerned about. However, after I give you that feedback, I'm empowering you to make the decision, to take in the risk or the concerns that I have, but I'm going to empower you to make a decision. And when they go out, that's going to be the best time to learn for both of us, because they're going to go out and do it. And then, you know what, maybe I go, you know what, maybe that was the best way. But all I'm asking them to do is, if it goes bad, or if it goes wrong, or it didn't produce the results, all I'm asking them is, what did you learn? Okay. It's all a part of growth. And you can't allow somebody to grow if you don't allow them to make mistakes.
Amen.
And so if you're doing is, if you're just a taskmaster and you're giving people tasks and you're like, go to A to B, they don't have to use their brain. They're just doing it. But nobody's going to take ownership in a job, because when they're done, the first problem they come up to, they're just going to come out and go, okay, well, here's the problem. What do I do? And what I want to have is people who are problem solvers. Well, to help train their brains to think, then it has to matter to them that there's a problem. Mm-hmm. And so when I say, okay, well, you're over it, don't come ask me what to do. I need a recommendation from you. And it's very fulfilling. I've been on both sides of this, when you're like, hey, this is what I've observed. and my boss is asking my input, and I go to them and I say, here's, I think, a very efficient way or effective way to solve this problem. And they take that advice and it works. Now you feel like you matter. Your opinion has weight. And so you really can get somebody who and turn them around in terms of their enthusiasm for the job. Mm-hmm. But if you talk to people who don't have any inputs, like I come in every day, I'm like a mushroom. They just, keep me in the dark. And
there's place for people like that. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are entry level positions. Mm-hmm. But if you want somebody to grow, you're going to have to empower them to make decisions without the fear that their job is going to be snatched from them if they don't always measure up 100% of the time.
You should put that on the top of your next line, and we don't hire mushrooms. That way people know that you only hire forward-thinking people that are solution builders. And no, I love that. I think anytime you can make that analogy with college or high school football, I think people understand it. It did seem a little point out. We're in such a fast news cycle now. It used to take us, this flood happened last, Thursday, Friday, whatever. It would have taken probably until now for us to even know how many people were even in the area back in the 70s. Now we're getting video of it actually happening. We're seeing death, on our doorstep. And so people thinking, okay, we've already discussed what's going on here. And who's going to go with the climate control? Who's going to go with the climate change? Who's going to start pointing fingers here? Who's going to say, well, someone's responsibility? Why didn't we have it? And of course, they're going back to all these things, trying to find out who turned down the siren thing and all. And I get that, but I think there is. Go ahead. Well,
I want to speak to Governor Abbott in that quote, and you're right. Some people could use, but if I found myself in a similar position, what I would come out right away and say, okay, I'm taking responsibility for this situation. We're still investigating the history of it. And, have there been warnings in the past? But bottom line is you say, look, but I'm accountable. So right now, I'm not interested in blaming. There's going to be time for that. Mm-hmm. Right now, we have to help and save as many people as possible, and all our resources are going into that. Now, if you are responsible, you come back and you address it, and you have to own it. That's what people who are accountable do. And you go, yes, 5 years ago, there was a recommendation because somebody forecasted that this could be. All right. So let's look at our process. I mean, you can't go back and change history. It is what it is. But you go back and go, okay, on that recommendation, who are the decision makers? And go back and say, why did you say it? Was it too costly? Was it too, and now that we know for a fact, we've seen what it can do, let's change our processes. Like who is analyzing, who's making the recommendations? How are the recommendations? How are they vetted? How do they come to me as the ultimate decision making in terms of, or the legislature in terms of allocating funding, all of those kind of things. So I think a responsible leader, and you take that into a business. All right. The bottom line is there's time for blame. Let's take care of any emergency issues right now. Let's make sure that the people at the flood that they're being fed, that the first responders are being fed. What are you going to do about the bodies and the remains and all of that? So you just bring some organization to it. But you have to go back from the very beginning, and not from the beginning of the flood, but going back to all the preventative things, work your way all the way through it to include the alarm system. Like it said that the owner of that camp, I just read that this morning, I think it was in the New York Post, said he died, but he was warned, for the last 5 years, or going back 5 years, at least 5 years, that this could happen.
Sure.
And everything now, so everybody could say, yep, he just whatever. But what we don't know is now, well, what were his reasonings? They may have said, yeah, you need to address this, but it's going to cost you $250,000. Sure. And he may have said, I'm not ignoring it. I just don't have the money to fix that problem.
Yeah.
So you go back, but I think you come back, a real leader faces the music and says, here are the problems. I'll give you this is on a much smaller level, but I was working for a nonprofit as a CEO. It was my first one. And somebody was managing, my bookkeeper, finance person, was overseeing all the credit cards. And she did a great job. Managing receipts, making sure expenditures were correct. But I made a rookie mistake, which is I gave her a credit card. And I was the one that was supposed to be checking her credit card.
Yeah.
And I was not taking the time every month to read her statement and to reconcile what she was doing. Well, it wasn't a lot of money, but it was just, it was, less than $100. But there were some expenditures that I should have caught that I didn't. And as a result, I said, first of all, I went back and said systemically, the problem was the person overseeing that should have never had a card themselves.
Yeah.
So that was a flaw that I had to correct. Second thing is, it wasn't clearly identified, and it's still my fault. But I didn't know. I wasn't thinking in terms of every month I need to review her stuff. So I'm like, okay, I need to have a list of where everybody's priorities or everybody's duties every month, to include the CEO, is identified, rather than just taking for granted these things are happening. And then finally I had to go before the board and I said, this is 100% my fault. Yeah. And if y'all punish me or reprimand me or whatever you choose to do, that's okay with me. All I'm saying, I'm telling you what happened. I'm telling you what I've done to correct it. But if there's consequences for that or punishment or anything else, then, I'm the person. Yeah. I'm the one responsible. So it's not easy, but that's how you move forward from tragedies like this. Yeah, you got to get those lessons learned and make changes.
It's something too, and I get that. It's like the bodies aren't even cold yet. Just let's chill out. I understand the news cycle and how they want to find them because we don't want this to happen again, and it continues to rain down there. We need to be compassionate, but we also need to realize, and seems like it's just happened over the last, say, 15, 20 years. We've had some things that have been that word unprecedented. I got so tired of hearing unprecedented. But if you talk about Hurricane Katrina, you talk about 9/11, you talk about COVID, now you talk about this 1 in 100,000 year flood where water rose 30 feet in 90 minutes. I think it's important to realize that when we're talking about, certainly 9/11 was not a natural disaster, but it's something we never seen before, something that we never thought could even happen. And when we're overwhelmed, and the system is overwhelmed by something, particularly when we're talking about a weather event, I don't know if you can prepare for that. And so we want closure. We want closure. Now we're talking about a school shooting where there was 21 guys that, we had that's horrible school shooting where all these children lost their lives because no one would step up and end the carnage. That was something that has been discussed and people are in prison for it. But when you talk about natural disasters like that, no one could have foreseen. You're near a river, and I guess you'd always have to assume. We got areas now of this world that were never in floodplains. If you're on top of a mountain, you feel you're pretty safe. Not anymore. Everything's a floodplain now.
Well, I'll give you a good example. Ruidoso, New Mexico, and I was stationed. I was 5 years. I've been to Ruidoso many times. It's about 2 to 3 hours from El Paso, Texas, and it's up in the mountains. And they had that flooding this week.
Crazy.
That killed a few people. So. Go back to the Greg Abbott thing. I do think he has to come back. A leader is saying, okay, moving forward, here's our plan to identify where similar type situations are. Here's what we're going to do to address it and try to bring early warning and all those kind of things. Now, the only thing I would say in terms of accountability or diming somebody out or holding somebody accountable is if you look and a problem was very clear and one person stood up and shut down the funding, like the funding was there and then they shut it down, or they had the power to make or break a decision, especially an elected official.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not talking about, because Republicans, everybody, for instance, who's on the left, who is upset about climate change, any weather related, it's all about climate change. And the evil Republicans don't do this. And then the Republicans get up there and talk about the evil Democrats and on and on and on. And tragically, they use this as a football that they just kick back and forth when it's real issues and real problems. And the vast majority of people are not looking for blame, but looking at, okay, how do we solve problems? And that's what leaders do. They solve systemic issues, problems, and they bring forward a plan. And it's not to say that there's not accountability. I have fired employees who have made honest mistakes, but have caused great damage out of just outright neglect and things like that. And if there's a politician, the constituents need to understand, yes, this politician made a decision. He or she should have the opportunity to explain why they made that decision. Mm-hmm. Maybe it made sense at the time to turn that down, or maybe there wasn't funding for it. But the bottom line is then the voters get to decide whether they want that person in office anymore. So that's accountability to some level.
No doubt.
Even to the point of any criminal behavior.
It's amazing, too. And we do this for a reason. We actually have a reason why we do what we do here. 9 mindsets of the most successful CEOs. And that number 1 is own everything, blame nothing. So we've kind of already gone through that. You sent 9 of these things, and so we could take several weeks and go over these. And some of these are foregone conclusions. I feel like it's pretty easy. But the number 2, I thought there's a couple that jump out at me. Feel the fear, do it anyway. Every CEO feels fear. The great ones use it. Let fear show you what needs your attention most. Explain to me what that means. What would be an example of a fear situation?
Well, it could very well. It very well could be. I'm sorry, I got a phone call right in the middle of the thing.
Okay,
apologize. When you talk about what worries a CEO, when you look out over the landscape, is it funding? Is it whatever? So it's 2 aspects. One is you see what you fear could happen. So an example of that would be like the flooding. People were saying, well, that could happen. It's worst case scenario. And you fear it. And so it's almost like, I don't want to tackle it because, I just want to pretend like it's not, because it could be messy, it could be difficult, it could be costly, whatever. But I think more common to CEOs is that they look out and know where an organization needs to go, but they are so risk averse that everywhere they look, it involves change. And if there's change, it involves uncertainty. And they're afraid of, well, if I step into this uncertainty and I fail, then I'm going to be looked at as a failure. And what does that mean? And so you overanalyze things. You get this paralysis through analysis because you want to take the time to think through every possible situation, every possible opportunity to fail, because you think you can foresee it all and eliminate a lot of it. Now, I'm all for risk assessments. Mm-hmm. But one of the great things that I learned in the Army was to do what they call battlefield assessments. And, you don't get time to sit down and ponder if you're getting shot at.
Sure. You
have to look on a battlefield and go, okay, enemy's here. I don't want to get crossfire here. And you're looking and you're making timely decisions. They're not hasty. They're not, I don't want to say they're not hasty. They're hasty, relatively hasty, but they're not based on just whimsical nature. They're based on quick assessments of facts on the ground.
Sure.
that can at least point you in the right direction. But you have to be able to move boldly. And you have to be able to say, we're moving forward and we're going to learn as we go. And we're going to be flexible and nimble to be able to overcome those challenges as we move along. But I have found that if you tell people, yes, we're going in this direction. Yes, we've never been down this road before. So guess what? We're going to run into unforeseen challenges. So I know they're there. we're not going to discover them sitting here.
Yeah, true.
You're not going to see them until you go down the road and run into them.
Yep.
But we just have to prepare to shift left or right as needed.
I'm going to mention the ones I'm not doing because I think they're important. Putting your team's success before your own. That certainly is should be. And then you obviously want to prop up anybody you possibly can in and around you because you're sometimes only as good as the pieces around you. Number 4, and we actually talked about this before we did it because I had to read it twice. Think in decades, act today. Make decisions for 10 years from now. Move fast on what matters today. Balance long-term vision with urgency. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So if you're strategic in your thinking and you have a long-term strategic plan, lots of times what you do in the moment may not fit 100% with what everybody's expectation is. But leaders make decisions in the now, but they're making it consistent. The decision is tweaked so that it's consistent with 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, because you're seeing that. The average person is not making day-to-day decisions based on where your business is going to be in 10 years. But you as the CEO, you have to see where that's going so that when you make a strategic decision, let's say you've got 2 items. Let's say, do we expand? Do we need this facility? It might say, hey, we have a great offer on this building next to us. Let's get it. But you already know that in 10 years, you're likely going to relocate somewhere. 5 years, you're going to relocate. So you're seeing the vision. And so if you know where you're going to be in 10 years or where you desire to be in 10 years, then it's going to affect do we add more people? Do we trim? Do we add more equipment? Do we grow our company? All those kind of things. And so all the time I'm making decisions, that again, people say, well, why did you choose this? Well, here are the factors. And some of those factors are what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years.
And I, just by doing the show with you, I've seen you do a couple of big ones, including change the brand and the name of your organization, which is something that you came in and actually thought about before you actually even took the job. And I know you've talked about several times in partnership with Tyson Chicken and some of the things they've done as far as, hey, can we do something like this in-house to save us some time and save some money as well. Create a culture of brutal honesty. Okay. Stay curious, but be decisive. That's okay.
Let me say something about that number 6.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Sure.
I love that because nothing to me is any more is more frustrating than somebody who is wishy-washy as a leader. You want a decisive leader. However, lots of times a decisive leader already thinks he knows the answers, and so the staying curious is understanding, yes, I have to make the decision, but things on the ground, I'm constantly learning new things. And so I tell the directors this all the time, look, I'm telling you today, this is what we're doing. And I may learn something that's going to affect that I'm going to come back to you in a month that says, hey, we're tweaking that. Because I'm going to gain new information that I'm constantly bringing in to sharpen the decision. So it's not my way or the highway. Sometimes the information I gather is from the experience of other directors who are allowed to give input and, again, take ownership of the program. So staying curious is don't think you've got it all figured out and then everybody's just going to execute what you want to do. It is continuing to learn from outside sources, from sources inside your organization. But when a decision needs to be made, you've got to step up and say, yeah, there's 10 different factors. I've considered it all. Here's what we're doing.
There you go. These are 9 mindsets of the most successful CEOs. And I would say he's one of the most successful, Michael Coleman of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. Make hard choices with soft hearts. Do tough things without becoming a tough person. Fire with compassion. Say no with kindness. Anything you want to mention on that? I know you're a very compassionate individual, but you also hold people to responsibilities.
Exactly. And lots of times, so I'll give you an example. I had a guy who was here when I got here, entry-level employee. I believe he was barely over what we would deem a functioning IQ. I believe he was an alcoholic. He was problematic, but I knew he had a 4-year-old daughter, and even though he was much older, and so I caught him stealing one day out of the warehouse, but he was stealing toilet paper for his house.
Yeah.
And so I brought him in and I said, look, if you have these kind of needs, you don't have to steal. You just let me know. We're going to take care of it. We're going to help you. And it was in our policy. If you steal, you're done.
Yeah.
But so that's where, you got to make hard choices. And I actually moved him around to 4 different positions, ending with custodian. But he just got to where he wasn't coming to work. I just had to ultimately fire him.
Yeah.
So that's an example. And then there's been other times where I've had to encourage people to go find employment somewhere else. And it's not that they just weren't, that they were problematic, but they just weren't getting the job done. They'd show up every day, but they just weren't a great employee. So I have to make a hard decision that you're not you're not the person I need for this job long term. But even though our policy may be for every year you worked, maybe you've only been here a year, I might, instead of giving you no benefits, I might carry your insurance for 2 or 3 months to help you in the transition, which that's a cost to us. Or I might give you 1 or 2 weeks pay and an extra month of medical. Do that. So I had to make the hard choice, but you don't want to be so dispassionate about people that you're like, well, I'm firing you. So go figure it out.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No doubt. Number 8, build yourself to build your business. Your company can't outgrow you. Invest in your health, relationships, and growth. You are the ceiling. I think this is really important. And I love the idea. We had something in the radio. It was kind of funny where we would, you got like 15% off a gym membership or something like that. I don't know. And which, whatever. But I think whenever you do, invest in the health, of your people, healthy people work better.
And that's right. And in my position, there's a lot of sitting, and there's pressure. And it is with a lot of other people. So you have to encourage them for their mental health as well. A lot of people can sustain the physical health. A lot of our jobs, our office jobs, are not physically demanding, but it's the mental health and the going home and taking that home and taking your job home and the pressures home and taking it out on your family, or not having healthy practices, personal habits, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, as leaders, you have to recognize that the organization is depending on you and a lot of things. And so if your plan is to be here and continue to affect people, you want to take care of yourself. Now, my personal choice so far is keeping Planet Fitness. I'm giving them a monthly charge, so I'm supporting them financially without necessarily wearing out their equipment.
Yeah.
So I'm benefiting them all the way around.
We will we'll hashtag this story on top of our podcast so you can actually look at it. The last one was create value that outlasts you, build something that thrives without you. Your greatest legacy is what continues after you're gone. That sounds really difficult to do. I don't know too many CEOs that don't have egos big enough that they don't want to do anything that's going to outgrow them.
Let me tell you, the greatest compliment I got the day I left Jimmy Hale, it was on a Friday. The next Monday, I called back and I said, how's everything going? And they said, nobody even notices you're gone. And why that was the biggest compliment was I had empowered directors and everybody to make decisions. Everybody had a clear role, a clear responsibility. So it didn't matter if I was there or not there.
Did they mean it when they said it that way?
I'm going to go out.
You left?
That's how I tell myself. But
yeah, you take it that way, my friend. That's right. I understand. That's the way I would have taken it too.
But I'm trying to do the same thing here. Is that, hey, if I let's say I get sick, have surgery, I'm out for a month. Everybody knows what still to do, decisions that need to be made, and And so whether I did it from at home or in here. And so you're building a structure that's sustainable for long term. And that's really what you want.
I think there was there was a Andy Griffith episode where they let Aunt B go visit a friend of hers for 3 or 4 days, and they did everything they could to make sure that the house was nice and clean. Actually, another woman came into the house and actually cleaned the place up. They tried to make it look messy because they wanted her to feel like she was needed because she felt like she was and it turned out pretty good. All right, great stuff. Hashtag HAFB, Heart of Alabama Food Bank, Michael Coleman. We do a Mission Minded every single week, and of course another show called Bite by Bite, which is specific to feeding America in the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. We're going to do that next right here on Tony Kurre Radio. Thank you, my friend.
Enjoyed it.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.